Cleetus McFarland will run the Arca race at Charlotte Motor Speedway with Rette Jones Racing, and Broc Feeney, Will Brown, and Cam Waters are all expected to run NASCAR events at the Chicago Street Course later this year. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got to NASCAR, another motorsports story discusser today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show them straight really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple days. Let's go ahead and just show them straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Williams Wallace's 2025 Starkey Patriota scheme that we'll see at Charlotte on Saturday. This scheme looks really solid in my opinion. I do think Joe Gibbs Racing knocked this one out of the park. It does look really good. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Charlotte. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Christopher Bell's 2025 Mobile 1 scheme that we'll see in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Mexico City. I really like this car. It looks fantastic. They knocked this one out of the park. I've always been a big fan of the Mobile 1 schemes that he's had. This one's no exception. It does look really good. Looks really solid. Looking forward to seeing on the racetrack at Mexico later this year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the AllStar race. As was reported by Matt Weaver from Sportside, a couple media companies, that we had 18 lead changes during the NASCAR Cup Series race for the AllStar event. That is the most in AllStar race history. That is a really big deal. The previous record, I believe, was 15 or 13 back in 2016. I think this AllStar race is one of the most compelling races we have seen at this track and really in AllStar race history in quite some time. Sure, there wasn't the best racing in the world at points, but I think it was one of the better races we've seen. We saw a fantastic and great finish overall, and I think it was generally a fun and amazing race to watch. It was really solid. I think it was really, really good, and I think the racing, again, was generally really, really fun to watch. I definitely think Tim Dinks could be better with the short track package, but overall, I think it's pretty impressive. We had 18 lead changes, really exciting stuff for that event. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Heim. As reported by the NASCAR Insights account on Saturday during the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race, that Corey Heim has surpassed 2,000 laps led in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. He is just the 13th driver in Craftsman Truck Series history to break that number. And keep this in mind, Corey Heim is only 22 years old, and he probably should have won that race in North Wilkesboro, so we're going to talk about that incident here in just a short little bit. But Corey Heim has been the guy to beat for the last couple of years, and he's already the favorite currently at the moment to win the championship in the Truck Series this year. Just things have to go his way for that to happen. Nonetheless, a really big deal for Heim to have that number of laps and have 2,000 laps led in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series is really awesome, and that's a pretty incredible accomplishment for him, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about North Wilkesboro. As reported by Adam Stern earlier this evening, that the NASCAR Cup Series AllStar race at North Wilkesboro officially sold out. They sold out in reserved seats and hospitality suites as well, and all the grandstand suites were able to sell out as well. This is a really big deal for North Wilkesboro. The energy for the event was incredible. You saw Marcus Smith kind of compare it to Lambeau Field, which I don't entirely agree with that personally, but I kind of get where he's coming from. It was a really big game feel event, and I think it made the race more fun to watch, and the fans were getting into it. There was a lot of energy from the event. It was really fun. It was incredible, and I think that it was still a big day for the sport as a whole to have an event like we had. Again, I thought the race is solid overall. I do think, nonetheless, it's really cool that the race is able to sell out this year. A lot of people showed up, and hopefully we'll see a lot of those fans go to Charlotte, though I'm not sure if a lot of those fans will be at Charlotte this year. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Keelin Harvick. Now, Keelin Harvick competed in the PLM event for the Cars Tour race. I'll talk about the main late model event here in just a short little bit. But Keelin Harvick competed in that event and finished P3rd at North Wilkesboro. And Steven Tarano put out a really good tweet talking about Keelin Harvick. I gotta say, Keelin Harvick races a lot of maturity for just a 13-year-old driver. He races with a lot of respect, and hear the guy in interviews, he just sounds very professional, and he's got that future champion in him on the NASCAR Cup side, which I think down the road he is going to be in the NASCAR Cup Series, considering he is a very talented driver at just 13. And keep this in mind, he's only about 3 or 4 more years eligible to running in the Craftsman Truck Series. He'll be eligible in 2031 or 2028 to race at least some select Truck Series starts. So I think Keelin's doing a really good job, and I think it's pretty impressive to see that Keelin continues picking up and doing a good job. Good for him to run really well at North Wilkesboro in the Cars Tour. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Indianapolis 500. As it was confirmed on Friday afternoon that the Indy 500 blackout has officially been lifted for 2025, and it's also expected that the 2025 Indianapolis 500 will sell out. This is a really big deal. This is only going to be the 6th time in Indy 500 history that the Indy 500 has not been blacked out. And they only do this when they have a sellout or special circumstances come into play. This is going to be huge for the ratings because I do think the Indy 500 ratings are going to be up a lot more because you do have the blackout that has been lifted. And I think this is a big win for IndyCar as a whole because if you have that blackout, they want people to go there. But when you have a sellout crowd, they do go ahead and don't have a sellout crowd, I should say. You do have to go ahead and do that. But to me, I think this is still a really big win for IndyCar. It's a massive, massive deal, and pretty excited to see that the blackout has been lifted for this year. It's a big win for IndyCar overall. Glad to see the Indy 500 will sell out also. We'll talk about Donald Trump here in just a short little bit, not attending the Indy 500, but nonetheless really good to see that they were able to sell out for this year's Indy 500. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we have the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. Now, before the NASCAR Cup Series race took place for the AllStar event and Indy 500 qualifying took place as well for the second day, you had the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix that took place. At the start of the race, Max Verstappen got a really strong run on Oscar Piastri, started second but made a big dive bomb to the outside and was able to pass Oscar Piastri for the race lead, and he scooted off to a really big lead and had about a 2 or 3 second lead. Then everyone started coming down pit road. And then the first time we had a car that stopped, I believe it was Esteban Ocon who stopped in turn 8 or 9, they threw a VSC. Then we went back for a long time and Max had a near 20-second lead. And then you had another car stop, that being Kimi Antonelli, who was running in the top 10, likely going to get points. And they threw a VSC. Never been a big fan of the safety car, I should say. They should have thrown, if you're going to do a VSC for one, you got to do it for the other one. You can't pick and choose what you're going to do. Not a big fan of the inconsistency there. But Max Verstappen got a really great restart. Lando took way too long to get by Oscar. Max pulls out to a pretty big lead by almost 4 or 5 seconds and comes off the corner and picks up in Red Bull's 400 star his 65th career Formula One win and his second win in 2025. Max is going to be a force to be reckoned with for this championship this year, mark my words. I know that they haven't been as strong this year, the Red Bulls, but I think it's a big deal for Max to pick up that win. Congratulations to him on winning the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. A well-earned and well-deserved win for Max Verstappen. His 65th career win is a big deal for the Red Bull team. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tony Stewart. Now, right before the All-Star race concluded or got started, we had the Top Fuel event taking place over in Route 66 in Chicago. And Tony Stewart was competing in the finals event. And Tony Stewart was able to beat Justin Ashley for the win, picking up his second Top Fuel victory of 2025 and his second Top Fuel NHRA win. And after Tony Stewart won the race, he was very emotional and very, very happy. Tony Stewart is won in pretty much every single category that you can win in. He has won, of course, in NASCAR, 3 NASCAR Cup Series championships, 49 Cup races, has won an IndyCar championship. The only driver that I believe has won an IndyCar championship, NHRA races, and NASCAR race, I'm pretty sure. I don't think even AJ Foyt's done that. If I'm wrong, correct me in the comments. But Tony Stewart just continues to put up and do impressive things in whatever thing he gets into. He was very happy. He loves winning races, and I think it's a big win for him. So congratulations to Tony Stewart on winning the Top Fuel event. A well-earned and well-deserved win for him to win the Top Fuel race at Route 66. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Pete Hegseth. As it was announced on Friday afternoon that Pete Cesv will be the Grand Marshal for the 2025 Coca-Cola 600. Pete Hegseth, for those who do not know, is the U.S. Secretary of Defense. He is a little bit of a controversial figure. I'm not going to get my thoughts politically on this channel, how I feel about him, but I think it's cool that someone in that area gets a chance and opportunity to give the command. It's an SMI decision. It is not a NASCAR-based decision. Yes, NASCAR does have to prove some of these people to be at these events, but overall, I think it's an interesting move to bring Pete Hegseth in. A lot of people on social media were not very happy about this. Some were also very happy to see him out there, and there's a lot of controversy around this, but I'm not surprised or shocked. It is a big day. It's Memorial Day weekend. Doesn't surprise or shock if they're bringing someone like him in. It's not surprising to see that he'll be given the command for this year's Coca-Cola 600. It's controversial, I know, but it's also not the worst thing we've seen, not the worst person given a command, and I think it's actually kind of cool to see that he's given the command, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Cars Tour race from North Wilkesboro. So, on Friday night, for the first time, the Cars Tour was on FS1 for the main LMCS event. And this race at the beginning was very, very chaotic. Of course, you had Dale Jr., Kevin Harvick, and Eric Brennan in the booth, which Eric Brennan should be calling races on Fox's Cup coverage currently at this moment. But back to the beginning of the race, Landon Lewis would win the pole for the event, and he looked really good. The first crash would happen when Laney Bice missed a corner. She went up into the outside of Jake Bowman, and a big wreck would ensue. Then we got back green, and we had another crash between Carson Quaffle and Caden Honeycutt. Caden Honeycutt was given a penalty, had to go to the rear, and Caden was apologetic after the race had concluded, and he felt bad for running into Carson Quaffle. Then we got back green. There were some engine issues for Caden Quaffle, unfortunately, but Landon Lewis got a really big lead, would dominate the race, and coming off the corner, Landon Lewis is able to pick up his third career Cars Tour victory and his second straight win in the Cars Tour as well. Landon Lewis, I've been very high on. I think he's one of the best young talents in motorsports currently at the moment. And I think that's the most emotional I've ever seen Landon Lewis after picking up a win. And it's a very emotional win because it's a massive deal to see someone like Landon Lewis go to victory lane. I think the young man is very, very talented. I think he's got so much potential to be very successful in this sport. And I think to see him go to victory lane is really awesome and really incredible. So, nonetheless, a well-earned win. Congratulations to him on winning it in front of Kevin Harvick, too, who's up in the booth. I think that's a big deal, and I really hope down the road we see more of those Cars Tour races on FS1 and maybe on a National Fox race in the future. I think that'd be really awesome if that could happen. But nonetheless, really exciting stuff for sure. Congratulations once again to him on picking up the win. A well-earned and well-deserved win for him. Good for him to pick up that win in the Cars Tour race. Good for him to get that win in victory. He absolutely earned that win and got it done, in my opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Donald Trump. Now, there was a lot of talk and conversation early this week and over the course of the last couple months that Donald Trump was considering to attend the 2025 Indianapolis 500 as a spectator. Well, it was confirmed by Adam Wren, who's a guy who does a lot of political stuff. He confirmed that Donald Trump will not be attending the 2025 Indianapolis 500. According to what he reported, it sounds like he was considering attending the Indy 500 this year, but there's other things going on at the moment that he has to kind of focus on currently at the moment, and that's the reason he is not attending the Indy 500. Now, don't get me wrong, it's been really cool to see the President of the United States, regardless of what side you're on, it's been really cool to see the President of the United States attend the Indy 500, but there's already a lot of issues when it comes to security currently at the moment, and you're going to have a lot of those security issues that are going to come into play down the road. And if you have the President of the United States, regardless of who it is. So I think they absolutely made the right decision here to not have him go out there. And I think he also made the right decision for himself as well. Because I do think personally, he's got a lot of other things he's got to focus on currently at the moment, like continuing to try to make this country better at this point. That's the main focus that should be happening currently at this moment. Again, I do hope down the road we do see him get the chance and opportunity to come to an event like the Indy 500, but there were issues with the Daytona 500. A lot of people were not happy with him being out there. I'm not going to say it, but I think it's nonetheless would be cool if he got the chance and opportunity, but I think right now it's not going to happen. It won't be there this year. It'd definitely be cool if it could happen, but he will not be attending this year's Indy 500, and now he's got other things he'll focus on currently at this moment. It'd been cool, but it's not happening right now. He'll be at this year's Indy 500. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Will Power. Now, there's been a lot of talk in the IndyCar world over the course of the last couple months that Will Power is in his final year of his contract with Team Penske. And there's a lot of talk that this could be the last year for Will Power over at Team Penske this year. Well, Roger Penske did a one-on-one interview with Bob Pockrass recently, I believe it was on Friday, and Roger Penske feels confident that Will Power will return to Team Penske in 2026. Will Power has been with the Penske organization for a long time. I think going back to like 2009 or 2010, he's been with that program. He's been one of the most successful drivers in the team's history. He, of course, won the Indy 500 in 2018 and has 2 IndyCar championships and nearly got the championship last year over Alex Palou. Will Power, though, has been off to an up and down start in 2025. Of course, we know that Alex Palou has been the dominant guy so far in IndyCar. But if Will Power is to leave the organization at the end of the year, a lot of people do believe that Dave Malukas could be the favorite to take over, or one of the other guys like Miles Rowe could come in and take over next year, or they could swoop somebody up that is very, very talented. I really hope Will Power returns for at least a couple years. Will Power is still a very talented race car driver. I get he's not been as strong in recent years. Well, that's not true, but he's been very, very good. but I think that I want him to come back because I think Will Power is a good enough driver to be in the sport. It would definitely be a great shame if he's not attending next year, not running with Team Penske. I think he deserves to be with the program. He's been really strong and really, really good over the course of the last couple, really for a long time in his career. He's one of the best drivers in IndyCar history. I think he's got the most poles of anybody in IndyCar history too, so he's the fastest guy ever in that area. But nonetheless, I really hope he does return because he deserves to be in IndyCar. He deserves to be with Penske. But again, if he doesn't, in fact, return to Team Penske next year, a lot of people do expect at this moment that it will likely be Miles Rowe or Dave Malukas who will come in and take over that car in 2026. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in the IndyCar world. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about BJ Mloud. Now, we did a video talk about this on the channel on Friday, but it was confirmed on Friday early afternoon that BJ Mloud will drive a 07 truck for Spire Motorsports this weekend at Charlotte Motor Speedway, with the BJ's Family Coaster Company sponsoring the event. This is a really big deal for BJ Mloud. This is going to be the first time that BJ Mloud has been in top-level equipment in any of NASCAR's divisions. When we think about BJ, he's always been driving for teams that are either not very good or teams that are extremely underfunded and don't have the biggest budget and can't go up front. Now, the 07 truck has not been overall the fastest truck in the field. We saw Kyle Busch struggle with that truck at North Wilkesboro, just finished barely inside of the top 10, even though he did have 2 speeding penalties. But that truck hasn't been overall the greatest. But Spire Motorsports is a solid team. And I think this is one way of them returning the favor, considering, remember, he sold off his charter over to Spire Motorsports so Zane Smith could get the chance and opportunity to be full-time with the Spire program as he was being loaned out from Trackhouse Racing. So I think this is a really huge deal for BJ. I really think BJ will have one of his best runs because BJ Mloud is no slouch. The guy's won a lot of late model races. He has had a ton of success across the world in motorsports. And I think BJ is someone who's earned the right and opportunity. And there's a lot of respect for many people in the industry because a lot of people do feel that BJ is a fantastic driver overall. And if you just give him the right chance and right opportunity, he could absolutely do a fantastic and great job for you. So I think this is absolutely well-earned. This is well-deserved for BJ. I think he honestly has a shot at a top 10. Yes, Kyle Busch is going to be in the field, and I think he's a favorite to win. I get he wasn't that strong in the Truck Series race. We're going to talk about some of that stuff from that here in just a little bit. But nonetheless, I think it's still a big deal for BJ to get this opportunity. He's earned the right and opportunity to go to a top-level ride. I think he's got a shot in the top 10. We'll see how he can do, and we'll see if he can perform this upcoming weekend at Charlotte in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. A well-earned opportunity with the Spire program, in my opinion. He's going to be teammates to Kyle Busch, so I think that's going to be fun to definitely watch him in a top-level seat. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Honda. Now, another big story surrounding IndyCar currently at the moment is the uncertainty of the manufacturers in IndyCar with some stuff happening for 2026. And one of the manufacturers that's heavily rumored to maybe be leaving IndyCar at the end of next year is Honda. Now, Roger Penske, in that same one-on-one interview with Bob Pockrass, basically kind of confirmed this rumor that's been going around. And Roger Penske says that he wants Honda to stay in IndyCar past their contract. Like I mentioned a second ago, this is the last year of that IndyCar contract currently at the moment that only goes through the 2026 season. Now, one of the big reasons they added the hybrid component in the first place was so they could keep Honda around for next year or after 2026. But even with the hybrid component being added to the back of the car, there is still a lot of people that think that Honda is going to leave. There's been a lot of conversation along with rumors about Dodge potentially coming over to NASCAR next year. There's been a lot of talk that Honda, though we've been hearing this for a very long time, there's been a lot of talk and conversations that Honda could join up with NASCAR as early as 2027 with potentially a program in a couple years. They wouldn't be approved for 2026 because they would have had to have a body component ready to go unless they've been doing that behind the scenes. They could have something for 2027, but I'm leaning more toward 2028. If Honda's going to come in, we do know Dodge more than likely is going to be coming to NASCAR next year. We're waiting for an announcement to happen very, very soon. We do expect an announcement on that sometime this summer. But nonetheless, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens on the manufacturer front. I do think it's realistic to think that Honda may leave at the end of the year, but I also think there's a chance that they could come back in 2027. I think that is certainly going to be interesting to follow as time progresses and goes on, as I do think this is going to be a story that is definitely going to become bigger as time progresses and goes on, and we'll see if Honda does decide to go ahead and return to IndyCar after 2026. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the All-Star race. Now, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about from the All-Star race here in the All-Star weekend as well. But one thing that was reported by Adam Stern is about when it comes to money and inflation for the prize pool of the money. And according to Adam Stern, he reports that many drivers feel inflation should be taken into consideration when determining, and that many believe that it should be around $3 million for the All-Star race in 2026. I absolutely agree with this. We have had the same $1 million pool for 22 years. I think that number should be going up quite a bit. In my opinion, I think $3 million or even $4 million should be the number we're going with, because that $1 million in 2003, that right now is worth about half of that, around $500,000 in 2025. And that number needs to be up over $2 million, though. I think it should be around $3 to even $4 million is what the prize should be. Because I think $1 million, while it is a big number, and $1 million is still a big number no matter what, I think you need to give a more of a major incentive for drivers to be able to be more aggressive and make moves. And granted, we saw that a lot in the All-Star race earlier tonight, but I do believe that you need to give more of an incentive and opportunity for people that would make more of those daredevil and crazy moves that they're desperately going to make if they want to have a lot of success in the event. So I really hope down the road the NASCAR is considering it. The fact that they're talking about it tells me there might be some consideration. They might go ahead and add more money to it. I think many drivers are saying things that many of us do agree with at this point. I really hope we do see more of a number coming out really soon. We do see more of an increase in the number of money going toward the race in the future. We're just going to have to wait and see if NASCAR does step up on that. But again, I 100% agree. We need to see more money for the Indy 500. Not the Indy 500, the date. We see more money going in for the Indy 500. I think the All-Star race needs a lot more money too. We see a lot of money coming for the 500. We got like $3 million for the winner of that event. The All-Star race should be very close, if not even more, than the Daytona 500 at this point. I really hope we see an increased number for the prize pool going forward, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Josh Berry. Now, Josh Berry had some very interesting comments in regards to the Cars Tour and Arca as well early this week that caused a lot of interesting criticism to him and a lot of interesting criticism on social media as well. So he's basically said that he's watched a lot of Arca races in recent years, and he says that Arca does not put on a good product. He says that the Cars Tour puts on a lot better racing. It puts on a lot better product as well. Now, on that same day, of course, when he says that, we, of course, have all the chaos that happened during the event in the Cars Tour race, but once everything kind of got cleaned up in recent weeks, too, we've seen a lot of craziness and chaos in those events. But once you get through all the chaos that takes place, the racing generally is really, really good. Now, this got a lot of flack from a lot of people in the Arca world, and I understand why the people from Arca are upset about it. And I get it, too, because for Arca, they're doing the best they can in some areas, but they do have some big problems. Compared to the Cars Tour, which again, many years ago, they were struggling for the competition side of things. They almost didn't even have a Cars Tour many, many years ago when it was a Hooters Pro Cup Series. When 4 or 5 cars are showing up, they were struggling to make ends meet. And then Dale Jr. came in and really saved them and helped them out in a really, really big way. Arca's in a very similar position to the Cars Tour. There's only about 3 or 4 really competitive cars out there on a week-by-week basis, and there just isn't a lot of competition. I do think right now the Cars Tour does put on better racing. I think that's just a fact, but I do think there's a lot of things that both can work with. I think both can really work together in a big way, and they don't have to kind of shoot each other down. So I think this is what Josh Berry's unfortunately doing, and I don't even think he really realizes this, is he's kind of shooting them down a little bit, and I'm not always the biggest fan of shooting down Arca. I think Arca deserves some of the criticism they got. There's no denying it. I think the racing product in Arca, and I've kind of criticized it too on this channel, I think there's a lot of criticism that is definitely deserved for Arca currently at the moment right now, but I think there's a way that both can exist and get better. I hope we do see some improvement for the Arca series down the road so you don't have all this criticism headed toward their direction. But I get why a lot of the Arca people are upset, but I do agree with Josh Berry on a personal front. I do think Arca doesn't put on as good a show as the Cars Tour when they're not wrecking all the time, and Arca's had some of those bad wreck fests recently as well. So I think that they deserve some of the criticism they got, and I also think both series have their strengths and do have their flaws, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rodney Childress. Now, we have talked a lot about Rodney Childress on the channel over the course of the last couple months. We know that Rodney Childress is no longer in the NASCAR Cup Series garage full-time as a crew chief currently at the moment. At the start of the year, he was, of course, a crew chief for Justin Haley and the number 7 team at the beginning of the year for Spire Motorsports. But right before we got back from Easter break at Talladega Superspeedway, he was let go from the team, and he said it was more of a him decision than really was a Spire Motorsports decision for him to go ahead and leave the team. They both weren't really working on great terms. Both the organization and him weren't working out everything perfectly, and they weren't doing the best that they could. And he did speak to Matt Weaver and a couple of people in the industry recently. He says he still wants to be on the Cup pit box going forward, and he still wants to go ahead and be a crew chief in the NASCAR Cup Series. Rodney Childress is one of the best crew chiefs in NASCAR Cup history. Now, I do think the next-gen car has unfortunately affected him in a pretty big way. I think in the next-gen era, he has not been as strong, but also some of the teams he worked with, let's be real honest, Stewart Racing, of course, was starting to fall off a cliff by the time he got over there when the team was starting to fall off, and he still got 2 wins in 2022, but at the time he was over there, they were starting to fall off in 2021, and then, of course, he went over to work with Josh Berry for a year at SHR, and Josh Berry showed some decent speed from time to time, but wasn't really setting the world on fire as a rookie. And then, of course, you think about Justin Haley this year. Justin Haley is a talented driver, but Spire Motorsports is a team on the up and up, and I know Spire Motorsports wants to be a team that wants to go for it, and they want to have a lot of success. I think Rodney Childress will be a crew chief, though, at some point in the future. Some say replace Alan Gustafson with Rodney Childress. I'm not sure if you're going to do better with Alan Gustafson, or Rodney Childress, I should say, than you are going to do with Alan Gustafson. I know Alan Gustafson has made some questionable strategy calls in best of times, but sometimes crew chiefs won't always do that. Look at Stephen Duran, for example, during the AllStar Open earlier tonight. To me, I think that Rodney Childress, though, deserves to be in the NASCAR Cup garage. I really hope he does get that chance and opportunity once again going forward, because if he does, I think he's going to earn it, and I really, again, hope we do see him get the chance and opportunity to do it, because he is really good and one of the best crew chiefs in NASCAR Cup history. I hope he gets a chance and opportunity to be a crew chief once again in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Preece. Now, if you watched the All-Star Open earlier tonight, you saw the penalty that Ryan Preece received. So Ryan Preece is in contention to win the All-Star Open, was running up in the front row on the restart. Unfortunately, Ryan Preece made a little bit of a mistake where he actually hit the orange box right as he came across our finish line, and he went to the rear of the field because of it. Now, Ryan Preece was clearly not very happy about it, because when you actually look at where it was at, I gotta be honest, I kind of understand Ryan Preece's frustration here, because there's like a little orange box they always have for every single race, but for some reason compared to other tracks, it is very difficult to see where that choose area is going to be. After the race had concluded, he actually got a comb, and they actually had to repaint it once again and make it a lot more brighter so everybody could see. And it wasn't just Ryan Preece that was saying this too. Todd Gillen had said something about it. I believe Roger Kroof had also said something about it as well on social media, and a couple other drivers, like I believe Brent Cruz also, who ran the Truck Series race, he also kind of talked about this as well. To me, I think that they definitely haven't had as many issues with the choose rule. There's not been too much criticism toward that in the 5 years they've had it. I think it's been one of the best rules the NASCAR has implemented in recent years, and has worked really well, especially for restarts, and it gives a lot of intrigue toward those events. And I think it's been one of the most successful things that NASCAR's had. Sometimes, though, you're going to have blunders in situations, and sometimes it's more of a track issue than anything else when something like this happens. But I do 100% get the frustration from Ryan Preece there, and I understand, because Ryan Preece is in position to win, and I think there was a lot of frustration from not being able to get up there and win, being very difficult to pass in the event, and once you lose a lot of your track position, you're going to lose a chance and opportunity to go to victory lane or even be a contender in these races. So overall, I get the frustration, I get the upsetness for what happened there. It was a controversial thing that happened that probably didn't need to be a controversy overall, but to me, I think that there's some things that they can definitely work on, trying to make that cone a little bit better and making the box be a little bit stronger going forward, so you don't have some of these controversies that keep happening going forward, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Charlotte Roval and North Wilkesboro. Now, there's been a lot of talk about the future of North Wilkesboro and whether they could host a points-paying NASCAR Cup Series race in the future, or maybe as early as 2026. And drivers were getting asked questions saying, would you love to see North Wilkesboro host a points-paying date in the NASCAR Cup Series? Among those that were very happy about that were Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell said yes, he would love to see the North Wilkesboro host a points mandate after he, of course, won the All-Star race earlier tonight. But he absolutely said it's the best short track in NASCAR currently at the moment, and he says they should be able to host a points pan race. Brad Keselowski echoed those same things, and Brad Keselowski also said he is not a big fan of the Charlotte Roval, and he says that the Charlotte Roval absolutely needs to go, and they don't need to be racing at the Charlotte Roval going forward. As much as I think for the first years of the Charlotte Roval that it did have a lot of success, I personally think it needs to go. Personally, I think that the next-gen car races so well on the mile-and-a-half tracks currently at the moment. Plus, the next week, you have so many road course races currently at the moment right now that I think removing one road course race is honestly not going to be the end of the world. So to me, I think we need to get rid of the Charlotte Roval and go back to the Charlotte Oval and maybe make it a playoff date. Now, obviously, what would you do with the All-Star race if North Wilkesboro would lose it? Well, obviously, you can move it to Charlotte, and then there you go. You have 2 dates there technically. And then you might be able to get the Charlotte Fall race as well and maybe do a little bit of a trade-off there. We have the All-Star race 1 year at North Wilkesboro, then do it at Charlotte. And then other drivers kind of echoed the same thing. Tyler Reddick was definitely in favor of having the racing full a points paint event. And I think also William Bowden and others in the industry also stated they should be able to get a points paint event. And I 100% agree with everybody saying this. I think North Wilkesboro needs to have a points paint race in 2026. I've been saying this for the last couple of years. There were rumors that last year on Easter week they were going to have a points paint day at North Wilkesboro. But for some reason, some of the things panned out. There were schedule issues last year, and that never unfortunately happened in 2024 and also 2025 as well. As much as I have enjoyed the All-Star race and I love the All-Star event overall itself, I don't think we need to have any more All-Star races at this track. And maybe kind of similar to what we're doing for the championship going forward. Maybe find a way to rotate it and do something different every year. So maybe like a grassroots track, for example, gets a chance and opportunity to host the All-Star race down the road. But to me, I really think that North Wilkesboro has earned the right to get a points paint date next year. I really hope it does get the chance and opportunity to get a points paint race because it absolutely deserves it. I think it's earned in my opinion. And I think North Wilkesboro is a good enough track that it can absolutely host a points paint date going forward, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Indianapolis 500. Now, over the weekend at North Wilkesboro, many drivers in NASCAR were asked about potentially if they were interested in running the Indy 500 in the future. And there were two big names that were mainly asked questions. Those are Bubba Wallace and Chase Elliott. The first one we're going to talk about is Bubba Wallace. Now, Bubba Wallace has asked this question while talking about Kurt Busch a little bit and talking about the product at North Wilkesboro as well. But Bubba Wallace was asked by media members from Front Stretch and was asked, are you interested in doing it? And Bubba Wallace basically said, no, I am not planning to run the Indy 500. He feels like it would be really, really difficult. And he says he is not planning to run the Indy 500 currently at the moment. Now, Chase Elliott also spoke on this, and he says that he's a little bit interested in running the Indy 500 down the road, but it'd be something that would happen many, many years down the road for him. But he says right now the main focus is NASCAR, and I'm not planning to do it at this time. I think you look at Bubba Wallace, and I think it'd be cool to see Bubba Wallace get the chance and opportunity to run an IndyCar down the road. But I think the main focus for Bubba is to continue trying to get better in NASCAR. And Bubba's been a good driver. There's no denying it and no question about it. But I think for Bubba, the main focus, again, is to try to continue improving and showing a lot more speed going forward in NASCAR. But I think especially with his connections with Scott Dixon, being friends with Scott Dixon a little bit, and kind of giving him advice as well, I think it'd be really cool to see it happen. But I think it's very difficult to get up to speed. For Chase Elliott, I've been saying this for a while. Chase Elliott would be a name I love to see run the Indy 500 down the road. Of course, his father has won at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway back in 2002. It's almost been 25 years since that happened. It'd be really awesome. It could happen maybe in 2026. But I don't think that Chase Elliott is going to be interested in that because, again, Chase Elliott doesn't do a lot of extra things in motorsports outside of doing stock car racing. Sure, he's done some dirt stuff in the past, but he doesn't do stuff outside of that. But I would love to see more of that crossover. If there's drivers that I could think could do it outside of Larson, Kyle Busch is definitely the one that comes to mind. The other one is Shane Van Gisbergen. You think about Trackhouse, and we know Justin Marks has expressed interest in bringing Trackhouse over to IndyCar down the road and doing the Indy 500. I think you look at SVG and Ross Chastain being the favorites for that if that happens. Nonetheless, I'd love to see more drivers run the Indy 500 from the NASCAR side, and we'll see if guys like that get the chance and opportunity to maybe run it down the road in the not-so-distant future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, We're going to talk about 2025 Indianapolis 500 qualifying in just a short little bit. But I talked about Kyle Larson's qualifying run on the channel earlier today, or yesterday when you're watching this video. And Kyle Larson would end up qualifying 21st for the Indianapolis 500. This means that Kyle Larson did not get the chance and opportunity to go for the Fast 12 or the Fast 6 like he did last year, but he also doesn't have to worry about getting bumped. This is big for Kyle Larson. Obviously, that McLaren has not been as strong this year as it's been in previous years or last year. Larson's car was trimmed out last year. Larson has had some issues this week, of course. He did unfortunately crash in Fast Friday, the second time he has crashed this week, and did back it in the outside wall, and there definitely were some nerves and concerns that he wasn't going to make the field. The good news for Larson after their first initial run, where Larson didn't really run as fast as he probably could have, where they had a lot of downforce to the car, they went back out a second time, and Larson was able to clock around 18th. Now, he would drop down to about 21st, but he's able to get a safe enough time over 231 miles an hour to make the show. The main focus for Larson now is to just get that car up to speed and be a contender for the main event. And I think Larson, despite the fact he's starting 21st, I think he's got top 10 speed. I think he will be a top 10 car. I feel like those cars are a lot better in traffic than they've been on their own. It just seems like the McLarens on their own aren't as strong this year as they've been in previous years. But we saw Pat O'Ward last year. He started in the middle of the pack. I think he started 16th or 17th, and he was up front contending for the win at the end of the day. So overall for Larson, the main focus and goal is to try to do what he can to get that car on later today, because of course we got practice later today for the Indy 500, the day after qualifying. So Larson will be looking to do the best he can to try to go out there and win, but it's big for Larson to represent the NASCAR side of things, and regardless of how you feel about Larson, I think it's a major deal to see Larson have the chance and opportunity to run the Indy 500. I think we'll have a good chance and opportunity to be competitive. We'll see what Larson can do in the 2025 Indy 500 and see if he can have the chance and opportunity to win the Indianapolis 500 this year. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Richard Childress. Now, we all remember about a week or so ago at Kansas Speedway, AJ Almondinger unfortunately had some issues with his engine, and his engine let go at the early portion of the race, about 10 laps in the event. Well, AJ Almondinger went on a massive tirade and ran, calling out ECR, saying, your guys' engines suck, and then you could hear him basically off the radio, basically being very angry and upset about the ECR engines altogether. Well, we haven't really heard a response from Richard Childress until now. It was reported by Adam Stern earlier this week that Richard Childress is not happy with AJ Allmendinger. He basically was not a big fan of the comments that he said against ECR, and he also tried to quote the team radio, and also in his words said that Alex Bowman was not complaining when he had an engine failure at Bristol, and Ryan Blaney was not complaining when he had an engine failure at Homestead, and also had engine failures at Phoenix as well, and other tracks in NASCAR. Well, I'm going to say this about Richard Childress. Richard, the reason that they weren't complaining about it is because both those cars have been fast, and they both drive for teams and engine companies that have been fast. Alex Bowman drives for Hendrick engines. I hate to break this to you. They've won a lot of races this year. Kyle Larson's got 3 wins. William Byron has got a win. The Spire cars, very, very strong also this year. You've got multiple of them competing for a playoff spot currently at the moment. And then you have Ricky Stenhouse Jr. with Hayek Motorsports being very competitive. There is one ECR car that is in the playoffs currently at the moment, and that is Ross Chastain. Everyone from AllStar from ECR, Kyle Busch, AJ Allmendinger, Austin Dillon, Ty Dillon, Shane Van Gisbergen, Daniel Suarez, every single other driver that's part of ECR is not in the playoffs currently at the moment. You wouldn't be having so much criticism if you guys had a lot of speed, but you had a lot of speed, but you didn't have reliability. They wouldn't be complaining as much. The problem is you're not super quick right now, and your cars are not reliable either. So I think Richard, I understand his frustration for some of the comments AJ made, but I don't think his frustration is fully valid because, look, you have engine issues. You need to get those resolved and fixed fairly quickly. Otherwise, more of this kind of stuff is going to happen going forward, and you're going to have more of these engine issues coming up, and you don't want that happening for a team that's got a shot to make the playoffs, and you have all your cars contending. It's not a good look for you guys. You're having issues with your engine program, and I don't think you should be upset because personally, I don't personally think that what AJ said was fully wrong and fully incorrect about the issues of ECR, because we've seen multiple people complain about those in the last couple months, and I think that needs to be addressed is the fact that the engines from ECR are just not that good currently at the moment, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Indy 500 qualifying. Now, we've already talked about Kyle Larson qualifying 21st for the Indy 500. But let's talk about the rest of Indy 500 qualifying. So, there was a lot of drama on the final day of qualifying. Let's first begin by talking about bump day. So, the 4 drivers going for the bump were Rinus VeeKay, Jacob Abel, Marcus Armstrong, and Marco Andretti. And unfortunately, Jacob Abel, who didn't really show any pace or speed, ran around a 226 to 227 mile an hour lap. His car was really slow, and unfortunately, IndyCar waved off his times when he tried to go out for a second time. Unfortunately, the Molson Coors car will not make this year's Indianapolis 500. He's the only one that goes home. Rinus VeeKay almost threw it away. He had a chance to kind of throw that away, but they were able to recover a little bit and get a decent time. That means that every other driver makes the field. Tough break for Jacob Abel. He didn't really have the speed. Unfortunately, when he was doing 226 and 227s, I pretty much knew at that point, yeah, Jacob Abel's probably going home. Let's talk about final day. Well, Team Penske had a disastrous day. Scott McLaughlin had a terrible crash like Colton Herta did a couple days ago, and other drivers have had issues. But really, really bad crash for McLaughlin, who was one of the favorites to win the pole this year. He unfortunately will not get the chance and opportunity. He'll start in 12th. Meanwhile, Will Power and Joseph Newgarden both failed inspection, and they were not able to get the chance and opportunity to go out there. Not tough break, but obviously there's a lot of people saying they should have had to go to the last row shootout. Honestly, I agree. If they were only issued today, though, they probably should have been dropping to the rear of the field. I don't think they should have absolutely been able to start where they are. I think if they legitimately did it, fine, it's understandable. But I think maybe they should have gone ahead and gone to the rear of the field. But we have a very major shocking upset. Robert Schwartzman has won the Indianapolis 500 pole in 2025. He is the first Israeli-born driver to win the Indy 500 pole, and he's the first rookie to win the Indy 500 pole since Teo Fabi back in 1983, and the first pole for Prema in IndyCar. A team that struggled early this week, by the way, didn't show a lot of speed early in the week and were having issues. They recovered all those throughout the week, and I think this is a massive, massive win for them. They may not be contending overall for win, even though Schwartzman does have some good speed. I really think Schwartzman will be a big factor for the win, but we saw a lot of proof that Robert Schwartzman is a fantastic race car driver. And to go out there and just in your first time on an all-one nonetheless, go out there and quintessentially get the pole is so impressive for a rookie. Again, it's been 42 years since the last time something like this happened. So it's a massive win. Congratulations to them on getting the pole. First Indy 500 pole for the program, a major deal for Prema. Congrats to them on getting it. It's a massive win for them overall because Prema, I think, is a team that's continuing to get better. They're getting stronger. I'm happy to see Prema get the chance and opportunity to win the Indy 500, a well-earned win for them. Not a win, but good pole for them. Congrats to Robert Schwartzman on winning the pole for the Indianapolis 500. A massive deal and a major upset in the Indy 500 this year. And now we're going ahead to move on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Corey Heim and Lane Riggs. Now, if you watch the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race on Saturday evening or Saturday afternoon before the heat races took place, you saw what happened late in the event. So let's set this up. For a majority of this race, Corey Heim has been the dominant truck leg. He's been most of the year. Corey Heim has led almost 600 to 700 laps in the Craftsman Truck Series this season so far. But coming to the end, Chandler Smith was coming up on fresh tires, and Chandler Smith was really coming quickly, tried to make a move on him, but there was a caution that came out with Ben Rhodes and Brent Cruz getting into it. Brent Cruz gets turned by Ben Rhodes, not the smartest move on Ben Rhodes' part. He completely turns it. Then we go ahead and go back racing, and we have a lot of contact that takes place between Corey Heim and Lane Riggs. Lane Riggs gets behind him and tries to make a move on him, and they both battle a little bit. Corey Heim, unfortunately, gets moved up the racetrack. Lane Riggs moves up the track quite a bit, and Corey Heim gets up in the low stuff and ends up spinning out. And after the race, Corey Heim was not happy. Chandler Smith stuck by and took the victory. Obviously, like I said, Corey Heim was not very happy with Lane Riggs, and he went over to confront him and asked him why he made the move and called him and said, "You're racing like an idiot, and you're going to have one coming very, very soon." Now, when I look at this situation, I think a lot of the frustration stems from the fact that this wasn't the first time that we've seen a situation with Lane in the race. It was the second time. Now, I completely understand why Lane Riggs feels like he didn't do anything wrong. I don't entirely feel like Lane Riggs did anything over egregious in this situation, but I understand Corey Heim's frustration. Corey Heim has had a lot of races where things have not gone his way. Corey Heim, let's be real and honest, should probably have more wins than he has currently at this moment right now. It's been a mess for him this year. He's only got 3 wins. He probably should have 5 or 6. And I think there's a lot of frustration from not having all the wins that I think he clearly deserves and he should have right now. And it's all because he's had things not go his way and bad luck come his way overall. So I get the frustration overall. That being said, I don't think what Lane Riggs did was insanely egregious. It wasn't the most egregious move we've ever seen, but I think he didn't really give him a fair shake and opportunity. And I think that's mainly why we saw Corey Heim be upset and frustrated. But then again, I don't think what he did was the worst thing we've ever seen in the sport. And I think that maybe some of the frustration for some of the fans, I think it's a little bit too much overall. But I think it's a lot of people understanding Corey Heim's frustration. I get Corey Heim being upset about that because, like I said, Heim should probably have more wins than he has currently at the moment. And I do agree that Lane Riggs is starting to develop a little bit of an aggressive reputation, which he hadn't had many years ago. So I think that aggressive reputation could come back to haunt him down the road. And some of the comments he made might come back to haunt him when he's racing for a championship, considering he's going to be racing for a championship against Corey Heim because he's been really strong this year, one of the few guys that has contended with Corey Heim for this championship this season so far. I think he better be careful to not piss him off more going forward. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Junior Motorsports. Now, for many, many years, there's been a lot of talk and conversation. We've talked about it a lot on this channel, made a lot of videos about it, but there's been a ton of talk and conversation about Junior Motorsports potentially having a NASCAR Cup Series program in the coming years. And Dale Jr. kind of spoke about being an owner in the NASCAR Cup Series and talk about the challenges of getting a car ready for the Daytona 500. Because remember, Junior Motorsports did run the Daytona 500 in 2026. Justin Allgaier drove the car, and they were pretty competitive in the event. They made the Daytona 500 during the dual races, and they ended up getting a top 10 finish. But Dale Jr. did reveal a lot of the challenges. They had to go to NASCAR, buy up all the parts and pieces, and they had a lot of difficulties, and he said it was a very difficult challenge for him to get kind of up to speed for the Daytona 500. And he kind of said that he's not entirely sure if he's going to have a full-time Cup program down the road. We always hear the rumors, right, about Junior Motorsports maybe going NASCAR Cup racing. I know Dale Jr. is somewhat interested. He did say in recent years that he would, if he was to have a NASCAR Cup program, he wouldn't have full ownership of the charter. He kind of spoke about this in another clip that surfaced earlier today about the charter prices going up. Right now they're around 45 to 50 million. We've heard that number is 45 million for the Legacy Motor Club charter. And we've seen the charter prices increase as time has progressed and gone on. So I think that's one thing to kind of look at too, is with the charter prices increasing at the moment right now, I think it's going to be tougher for a team like Junior Motorsports to get that chance and opportunity to go full-time Cup racing. But one of my theories is that maybe Junior Motorsports and Dale Jr. find a way to buy into a team like Trackhouse Racing. We know Trackhouse has Connor Zilisch in their arsenal, and we know that Suarez is in his last year of his contract currently at the moment, and many people do think that he could be gone at the end of this year, even though some are speculating like DBC saying maybe SVG could be gone at the end of the year too, though I don't think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be leaving the team anytime soon. But I think for Junior Motorsports, again, it'd be really cool to see Junior Motorsports get the chance and opportunity to be in the NASCAR Cup Series. I'm just not sure if it's going to happen at this particular moment for 2026. I do think there's a good chance it happens. I think anything's possible. If you see Connor Zilisch go up, it'd be cool for it to happen. We'll see maybe down the road if Junior Motorsports does get the chance and opportunity to have a NASCAR Cup Series program, maybe in 2026. We'll see if it happens next year. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about tempers from North Wilkesboro. Now, every time we go to a short track, regardless of how good the race is going to be or not good, there's always going to be some tempers that are going to happen at North Wilkesboro Speedway. And of course, with being the All-Star race, the All-Star Open in the main event, there were a lot of drivers that were very upset and very angry with other drivers after the race concluded. First, let's talk about the stuff that happened between Ty Dillon and Zane Smith. So apparently Ty Dillon and Zane Smith had some contact on the racetrack. Fox did not do the best job really showing everything tonight, which of course it was their final broadcast of the season. They didn't do a fantastic job really showing everything that was going on at the time. And apparently there was contact between both of them, and Ty Dillon basically told Zane Smith, apparently, he said that if Zane Smith does wreck him again, he is going to be his butt. Well, Zane Smith actually responded to Ty Dillon by basically saying, you ain't going to be doing anything. You don't really step up. You ain't going to do shit. That's exactly what he said, which I found that Twitter beef to be really, really funny. Both drivers, of course, have shown decent speed this year in the NASCAR Cup Series, but I just find it funny that this stuff is spiraling over to Twitter currently at the moment and on X right now, and I think there's some funny comments there. One of the big rivalries that also happened in this event was between Shane Van Gisbergen and Todd Gillen. So Shane Van Gisbergen had dominated the early portion of the Open, But Steven Durant, for some reason, made a terrible and horrendous strategy call that cost Shane Van Gisbergen an opportunity because tires weren't really mattering too much, unfortunately. And if you had the race lead, even if you're on old tires, you were likely going to win the race. But for some reason, Steven Durant, in his infinite wisdom, decided to go ahead and instead of taking 2, he took 4 tires. And with everyone taking 2, they were starting in the middle of the pack, and they couldn't get up front and got stuck in the dirty air and dropped back quite a bit. Well, there was contact between Todd Gilliland and Shane Van Gisbergen. Apparently, Shane had forced Todd Gilliland up the racetrack, and there was contact between both those guys. After the race concluded, there was a brake check from Todd Gilliland, and then Shane went up and confronted him a little bit, gave him contact, and they talked after. Apparently, Todd Gilliland was not happy. I think SVG was really frustrated about things that happened to him, unfortunately. He probably should have won the All-Star Open. It should have made the event. He probably got the fan vote, but of course he didn't. I think a lot of that frustration on why he was upset with Todd kind of came from a lot of those issues that happened on the track. For him, though, he showed some good speed. Just tough to see him get into beef because he really hasn't been a ton of beef in NASCAR currently at the moment. But then, obviously, the big one from tonight is Logano and Christopher Bell. This is a big one from the race. They're both battling for the win, going for the win, and going for the victory. And unfortunately, there was some contact. Bell got forced up in the outside wall by Joey Logano. He forced him up the racetrack into the wall. And then later, we saw Bell make a little bit of retaliated move, didn't get into him, and they were battling really hard. Logano never had any contact from Bell. Logano goes up the racetrack, and then Logano was really upset, wasn't a big fan of Broder's caution, and he basically said if I got the chance and opportunity to get up to Christopher Bell, I would have gone and wrecked him. Personally, I don't think Joey Logano should be complaining. Logano started it, and Bell finished it. I think Logano has no right to be upset. The same thing I kind of said with Lane Riggs and Corey Heim. I personally don't think what happened there was over egregious from him, and the fact that Logano's done stuff like this before, he shouldn't be really complaining about stuff like this. To me, Logano, I think, is just crying a little bit personally on that front, unfortunately. So I think Logano, I get his frustration. I'd be upset too if I got moved, but with Logano's reputation in the past, I personally think Logano shouldn't be mad, and Bell basically kind of reacted to that. We may see beef from these guys going forward. We'll have to kind of wait and see. They're 2 of the best drivers in NASCAR Cup Series, but personally, I don't understand what Logano's so mad about. He's raced people like this before and has raced people dirty like this in the past. Still, it's kind of funny we got some beef between these guys, and we got a lot of angry drivers after the race at North Wilkesboro, which isn't shocking and surprising. We didn't have a big fight happen. We did have some tempers flaring after the race that took place in North Wilkesboro, which again is not the most shocking and surprising thing, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about supercars. Now, we kind of talked about the story a little bit on the channel earlier this week on Friday, but it is expected that 3 NAT supercar drivers from the V8 Supercar Series are all expected to come over and race in NASCAR during the Chicago weekend in 2025. Let's first start by talking about Broc Feeney. Broc Feeney, we talked about this on the channel earlier this year, but it's expected that Broc Feeney is working on a multi-race deal currently at the moment with Kaulig Racing. It's rumored he is going to drive at the Chicago Street Course, could also end up running at Mexico City in the next month or so, as that is one of the races he does have off currently at this moment. Broc Feeney, of course, is a 22-year-old sensation. He's won 12 or 13 supercar races and finished runner-up in the Supercar Championship in 2024, and that's despite the fact he is only 22 years old currently at the moment. If he drives for Kaulig Racing, is going to be a major factor in this event. Kaulig Racing's road course program has generally been really good, and I also look at the speed that Shane Van Gisbergen had last year in this race. SVG is, speaking of which, will be running that race, and also Connor Zilch, who is one of the best road course racers in the world currently at the moment. He is going to be running that event as well as a full-time driver. He's already won a race so far this year, so you're going to be looking at those 2 guys to be really strong in the event, and there's probably going to be other Cup guys that are going to be entered as well. Next, let's talk about Will Brown and Cam Waters. Cam Waters is expected to drive a RFK or RFK affiliated team. It will likely be either a 4th RFK racing car, maybe the number 26 is the number that RFK is used, or it could be something like the number 30 or like 32 or something in the RFK stable, like a 29. That could certainly be a possible number they do end up using. 29 does have close ties with Brad Keselowski. The 29 is not being used in NASCAR on the Cup side right now, so I think that could certainly be an interesting one. It could be a Rick Ware racing car as well, probably the 15 that we've seen so far this year with Cody Ware, and also technically 0-1 with Corey LaJoie. We saw Harrison Burton race tonight, which we could see Harrison Burton make more starts in NASCAR at some point this year in the Cup Series. But Cam Waters was really strong last year in his Cup Series debut. And he was really good in his truck runs until he got caught up in some issues. But he was doing a really good job in his debut. Was running in the top 10 on good strategy. And then got caught up in that big crash and incident that happened about halfway through the event when everyone decided to play pinball and wreck each other and try to play bowling going into the final turn, which turn 11 is a very treacherous turn at Sonoma Raceway. But Cam Waters is very talented. There are rumors in the offseason that this is going to happen, and I think it's cool. He's likely going to be back in the series this year. And finally, talking about Will Brown. Will Brown originally was going to have a deal with Childress Racing to drive in the number 33 car in this event. Unfortunately for Will Brown, that deal did not go through to drive for them, but because Kaulig Racing is an RCR affiliate, this makes a lot of sense. It'll be a third Kaulig racing machine from, it sounds like, the number 13 that Shane Van Gisbergen drove last year at the Charlotte Roval, and also AJ Almondinger drove when he did run the race at COTA last year and got himself a top 10 finish in it. These two drivers are big representation. We, of course, have seen a massive supercar movement in recent years, and a lot more of these supercar guys I do expect to come over as time progresses and goes on. I think that Will Brown and Cam Waters are going to be favorites to win. Now, obviously, of course, Shane Van Gisbergen is probably the overall favorite to win the Cup Series and the Xfinity Series race at Chicago. He should have won the race last year in the number 16 Kaulig car, but of course, he got caught up in a wreck thanks to Chase Briscoe, who literally missed the corner and ran into him unintentionally, but still ran into him, unfortunately. But I do look for all three of these guys to have a ton of success in the events. And again, I do think that those three guys are going to have a great chance and opportunity to go out there and be really strong and major contenders for the wins that they're in. They're all three really good drivers. They're respectful behind the wheel. They race very strong. They do, again, race aggressive from time to time. But I do think at the end of the day, all three of these guys are going to have a lot of success. And I think they're all going to be very, very strong and really competitive when we do go ahead and race in the event. Looking forward to see these guys race at Chicago later this month. And I'm excited to see what they can do in early July in 2025. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Cleetus McFarland. As it was confirmed on Friday afternoon, we did a video on the channel earlier on this, but it was confirmed that Cleetus McFarland will be running the Arca race at Charlotte Motor Speedway, driving a number 30 car for Rette Jones Racing. This is going to be his first non-super speedway start in the Arca divisions and also in the NASCAR divisions as well. He has already ran 2 starts in Arca this year, first one being at Daytona National Speedway. Unfortunately, got caught up in a crash thanks to Amber Balkan, who unfortunately had some trouble. She had some mechanical gremlins that unfortunately affected her. She took the car to the inside, and Cleetus just had nowhere to go, got collected in the wreck. He had multiple other incidents he was involved in before that happened, but he had no damage or major damage in those events. Then he ran at Talladega Super Speedway, and Talladega was certainly interesting. He had basically lost a cylinder in the race, but really early in the event, had lost the draft early, almost went a lap down, but kept this car on the lead lap, catching up to one of the packs in the middle that was almost a lap down at one point, but he got back up there and got a really solid top 10 finish and finished in 9th place. And that's his first top 10 in Arca. So this is going to be a much more different opportunity here. Now, Rette Jones Racing's program, when you look at their intermediates and even their short track programs, they have had decent speed. I don't think he's going to be a major factor to win. I don't think anybody should be expecting him to be a major factor to go to victory lane. But I think this is a big deal for the sport. Cleetus McFarland brings a lot of eyes to the sport. You look at the in-car cameras. Cleetus McFarland brings a lot of people. The in-car camera had like 80,000 people at Talladega Super Speedway. Keep in mind, that's about a fifth of what was actually in the Arca broadcast at Talladega. Like 400,000 people tuned into that. So basically almost 25% of the people that were watching the event at Fox were also watching the race and watching the onboard camera from Cleetus McFarland. So I think that he brings a lot, and he's wanting to take this seriously. He's kind of talked about having interest and maybe wanting to go ahead and run the Daytona 500 down the road. Now, he has said that he's kind of shifted his focus toward trying to get a lot more experience, but he does want to make a NASCAR start at some point this year from what it sounds like. And getting more starts at different tracks like intermediates and short tracks too is really going to help convince NASCAR when he does get the chance and opportunity to be approved to go ahead and run it. But I think Cleetus McFarland is huge for the sport, and I think that he getting the chance and opportunity to run is really, really huge. So I hope regardless of what happens, he can have a lot of success at Charlotte. Now, what are my realistic expectations? Top 10, I think, is a goal. Because while Arca does have some competitive cars, like the 18 car for Joe Gibbs Racing, the 28 for Pinnacle, and some of the Venturini cars, the Rette Jones car kind of fits in that second group. I think he's going to have top 10 speed, and I think he's going to be in the simulator trying to get as much experience as possible behind the wheel so he can be absolutely ready and can absolutely be prepared. And again, he has stated this, and I've talked about this, but I think 2027, running the Daytona 500, would be extremely ambitious unless he does run a full season in NASCAR. And he's got to get approved to do that full season. So getting experience at tracks like this is going to be very important. He is definitely taking this seriously. There's no denying it, and there's no question about it. I think he is a talented driver. The guy can handle a car, but of course it's at a closed circuit, right? So I think we got to kind of think about that is it is at a closed circuit. But I think for Cleetus, the fact he's taking it as seriously as it is a major thumbs up for the sport overall in my eyes. And I think it is nonetheless really fun and pretty awesome to see that Cleetus is going to get the chance and opportunity to run another race. I think he'll run more than just this in all honesty. The fact they're adding more races as the season goes on, that's incredible. I'm hoping he can have a lot of success and show a lot of people why he deserves to be in the sport. And I hope he can do a really good job in the event at Charlotte, as I think he can definitely be competitive for sure, in my opinion. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel. Turn notifications on so if I win a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Facebook and Instagram and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. How do you think Cleetus is going to do at Charlotte? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And more thoughts about drivers and supercars like Broc Feeney, Cam Waters, and Will Brown racing at Chicago. And how you think you're going to do. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Tomorrow on the channel, we're going to have Indy 500 race picks. We're also going to have the entrance for the 2025 Coca-Cola 600. Then, of course, on Wednesday, we're going to have a NASCAR news video and the Truck Series race picks. And then Thursday, we're going to have the Coke 600 picks and maybe Xfinity picks as well. And we're going to have other content dropping. People like Haley Deegan, Shane Van Gisbergen, Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Ross Chastain, Bubba Walls, Connor Zilch Jr., Motorsports, Sam Mayer, Sheldon Creed, Frankie Muniz, Cleetus McFarland, once again, Dodge, Honda, Logan Paul, all the good stuff we'll talk about on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.